Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get it started then. So welcome everyone to Corkscrew's Lunch and Learn. My name is Sally Stein and I'm the Director of Public Programs for Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. And I want to welcome you all here to our Lunch and Learn. Today we have a community science program, a presentation about a local community science program called Frogwatch. And today we have Becky Speer from the Naples Preserve, the City of Naples Preserve, that will be speaking to us about the Collier 2 crew and some of our local frogs and toads that we have in the area. So it's a great time of year to learn about frogs. There's a lot of them calling right now. So just to talk about a few things. Right now, everybody is on mute. And you'll be on mute the whole time. If you have a question, though, you can type it into the chat box and we'll get to the questions at the end. I hope that we'll have time to get to all of them, but we'll try our best. And you can always email me or Becky if you have additional questions later on. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Becky get started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us today. So Frogwatch, what in the world is Frogwatch? Well, it's a group of volunteers down here in Southwest Florida that go out during the summer and we monitor the frogs by listening to the calls. Frogwatch down here started in 2000. There were a group of people talking about, you know, we really should be monitoring the amphibians down here because amphibians are indicators of how our environment's doing. So they got together on April 15th at the Calusa Nature Center and Planetarium. And also helping to host that was CREW, which is Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed, Florida Gulf Coast University, and Audubon Society of Southwest Florida. They set their guidelines by the ones developed by the North American Amphibian Monitoring Program. And as a matter of fact, our data is sent to them. How did I get involved in Frogwatch? I was first exposed to it there's their website, by the way. I was first exposed to it, it's probably about 2007. I got a phone call from someone I knew that worked at the Calusa Nature Center, and she said, hey, Becky, guess what? There's a rare opportunity has come up this week. The Frogwatch crew that is up in the Corkscrew Swamp area actually has an opening. They usually don't. Do you want to be on it? Do you want to join in for this week? And I thought, well, I said, are you going to be there? And she said, no. And so then I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm not going to know anybody. I don't know, listening for frogs and toads, that sounds a little boring. But then I thought, well, you know what? She took time out of her busy day to call me and she's so excited about it. I shouldn't refuse any opportunity, right? We should all try to learn. So I said, okay. So I got the information and I went, and guess what? I had a great time. It was the best thing ever. The people were so nice. One of the crew members took me under his wing because I didn't know any of the calls down here. Took me under his wing and I learned the calls that night. I stood right beside him and he said, this is this, this is this. So it took till 2009 for a coworker of mine at the time, Heidi, and I started our own route down here in Collier County. And what happens is we monitor, the crews go out on the third Wednesday night during the months of June, July, August, and September. We have 12 sites that we stop at, and we have to rotate where we start each month. So when we went out to develop our route down here in the Naples area, we had to keep these things in mind so we knew what type of areas to pick. So first of all, 12 sites takes a lot of time. So what it is, it has to be a place where you can get out of your vehicle and listen right there. You really don't have time to walk anywhere. Many times we don't get in until after midnight because you can't be at your first stop, even start until at least a half hour after sunset. We picked out the sites. We actually went when it was dry in the daytime. You can tell where the frogs are probably going to be during the wet season. Just look at the trees. Cypress, there's a clue right there. This is going to be wet in the summer, and other vegetation. We also had to try to set it up so that we could rotate around, start at different places each time. So here's our route. And by the way, the map is not to scale. So if you're familiar with the Naples area, I'm going to put up a few places so you can get your bearings. So here's the Naples Preserve. That's where I am currently, right here by the Coastland Mall. There's the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. All these yellow boxes are our stops. Rookery Bay, Sabal Palm, that's a road that goes into Picayune Strand State Forest, one of the entrances. Junior Sheriff's Camp, you may not know where that is, but it's right next door to where they have the swamp buggy races. We had our sites, we thought, man, they're cool. Look at, we've got all this, it's gonna be wet. We're gonna hear a lot of frogs. And then guess what happens? Things got changed by humans. This is what we were met with when we started our first, this year was last week on the 17th, we went out. This is what we were met with at one of our sites. So not good news to start out our season. Some of the other areas, Madison Park, when we set up there, it was already a housing development, but we picked an area where they hadn't built yet. They had a lake there as a retention area, and otherwise it was just a mowed area around there. So we thought this will be a great site. Well, this is what it looks like now. And if the first driveway there to the right, that's where we used to park. That used to be nothing but sand there, and that actually was their concrete mixing and dumping site. Across the street, there was, it would have been sitting right next to that white car on the left side, was a porta-john. And there was a Cuban tree frog that used to live in there. And we know there was a frog in there. We weren't using the porta-john, but the frog would come out at night and sing to us. This is one that's going on and is really going on currently. Manatee, it's near the Manatee Middle School. That US 41 in that area used to be one lane going each way, and then they did this. 3 lanes going each way. They have street lights. Everybody's zooming through there. The figure you see on the slide is me. This is where I used to stand when it was just one lane going each way. So of course, now that they've widened it, now that they've widened it, I had to hop on over to a different place to stay safe. Along 41 on the side where you see me standing was wooded. Then this happened. And you still can see cabbage palms in that. No, they just weren't clearing out the exotics. They ended up clearing the whole area. So then it looked like this. This is low in here, so it does flood during the rainy season. And it was great last year. We heard pig frogs and leopard frogs in there. It was just wonderful. So last week when we went out, this is what we were met with. Yep, they filled it all in and they're getting ready to build a housing development. Junior Sheriff's Camp, there's a lake on the campsite, and the other side of the road, there was a meadow area that used to flood. So when we went there, this is what we heard and saw. So what happened is they filled that all in with tile, so we didn't hear the frogs anymore. And now this is what it looks like. They're building condos right up to it. The Junior Sheriff's Camp and the lake would be to our back. We're facing that big meadow. They have street lights there. However, last year they actually did something good. They took this area and they regraded it and made it so water collects there. So now it looks like this. This was last week. Look at even the little blue herons are there using it. Great for frogs and toads to breed in. It's a gentle slope, doesn't get really deep. It's ephemeral. It's not there year round. Boy, the frogs and toads like that to lay the eggs because there are no fish there. But as I was standing there, I took this picture and then this was the next thing that came down. So they're still building in that area. Then a lot of our sites were changed by nature. And I have nature in parentheses here because some of these things were caused by man. Big one was the big fire in 2017. The Picayune wildfire was started by humans. Here we are at the junior sheriff's camp. We've turned around and we're facing the lake. That burned. Thousands of people had to leave their homes during this fire. This is the Benfield Newman area. That's the start of Alligator Alley there where you see the 101. This is private roads back in there. That's where a lot of the horse farms are. This is one of the entrances to Picayune Strand State Forest. This is after it burned. The fire was so intense it actually killed all the trees. And this is Benfield. That's on our way down to the site that I just showed. Burn. As a matter of fact, this burned again this year in one area. So not only have wildfires changed the area, Hurricane Irma, our September Frogwatch was supposed to be a few days after the hurricane. Well, of course, especially like on this road, all the electric lines were down. You couldn't even go out in the daytime and be safe, let alone go at night. So we had to wait a week. We went out and then we happened to see when we started down this road, there was a new sign down there. You're probably not going to be able to read it. Let me move it a little closer for you. Yep, Frogwatch is never boring. As a matter of fact, when we've been down this area, we've actually had black bear run past us. Always something new going on. So it's not boring. So now let's get to the good stuff. I want to unveil our Frogwatch crew, our C2, that stands for Collier 2. That's our route number. Here we are for this year. I mean, who wouldn't want to join our crew? Aren't we snazzy dressers? Look at this. So this year we did have to add one item to our apparel. So these are new photos. These were taken last week just before we went out. All right, so the frog crew's here. All right, we're gonna go. Let's get ready to go. So we need our clipboard with our information sheets. We need our book light because the data is put on these as we're driving from one stop to the other. And remember, it's dark outside. Let's take a closer look at these sheets so you can see what we fill out. And actually, these are all available on that Frogwatch site that I had at the beginning. So each site has this that we have to fill out. Well, let's look at the sky code. So we have numbers we put for this, and we've actually used all these numbers except for one. And I don't know, maybe you can figure it out on your own which one we haven't used. I think if we use that one down here, we're not going to have people coming down here anymore. No more snowbirds. And then calling intensity. Let's take a look at that. So we put the species detected and calling intensity. 0 is what we don't want. That means we didn't hear any frogs. 1 is that you can hear, it might be one calling, it might be several, but they're not overlapping each other and you definitely can count them. 2 is when the same species, they might be overlapping, but you still can get a good idea as to how many are there. And then 3 is what we really aim for. That's a full chorus. And some of these choruses are so loud that it actually makes it hard. You have to stand there for a minute and think, okay, what is calling? Because it's deafening. And they often block out the other frogs that are calling. So sometimes when we have choruses going, there might be other frogs calling that we don't hear, so we're not recording those. All right, so we got that. And then, of course, we need our pencils, sharpened pencils, to write down the data. How do you like that pencil? I actually got that at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. Need an eraser, although we don't make many mistakes. And then the all-important Kestrel. This is a little handheld weather station. It gives barometric pressure, just all kinds of things, wind speed, wind chill. What we use it for is the temperature and the relative humidity, because we need to write that down. All right, so we're going to take you down Sabal Palm. This goes into Picayune Strand State Forest. It was great down there last Wednesday. This is usually a good place to go. No traffic, so you can really hear. So what we do is we're going to take you along. We pull out, we get out of the vehicle, we spread out, and we'll stand there for 4 minutes. For the first minute, we just don't record anything because we've made a disturbance there. So you have to let things settle down a little bit. And then we listen for the next 3 minutes. And hopefully this is what we hear. So we got to wait. It's not dark yet. Remember, we got to wait till at least a half hour after sunset. So let's let the sun go down. By the way, on a full moon, it's beautiful down there on this road. All right, are the frogs going to call or aren't they? Isn't that beautiful? That's what we actually heard last week too. That was recorded at another year down there. All right, so we not only hear frogs, we hear other things down there too. You have to be able to differentiate what you're hearing. So I'm gonna play sounds and try to see if you can figure out what they are, what else we hear when we're out on. Of course, there are plenty of mosquitoes. That's right, the Who Cooks For You owl. And there actually was a Chuck Will's widow calling in there too. So this photo was taken down on Sabal Palm. The barred owls like to sit up on the power lines and then they swoop down and grab the frogs. Not only hear things, we see things. So if we see something moving in the road, we stop the car and everybody gets out usually. And we have to check it out and see what it is. So this is a southern toad. This is amplexus. You could call it a breeding embrace, maybe. So that's the male, the small one. He's found his girl and he's not letting anybody else have her. So the eggs are fertilized externally. So he fertilizes them as she's laying them. Sometimes they get on our shoes. Here's a leopard frog. Lots of times we'll see them jumping across the road. Pig frog. This one's on the road and it might be because there was something else on the road. Crayfish. And later on you'll find out the connection between these two if you don't know already. We see insects down there sometime. Remember, this is all after dark. The two-striped walking stick. By the way, how many insects do you see in that picture? How many walking sticks? Let's try a different angle. There you go. Yep, there's the male. This, unfortunately, is something we see down there. The island apple snail, and if you look, this one's laid eggs, a pink cluster. So this is not native. If you see that cluster of eggs, that pink, you should destroy them. And the way to do it is, like if we were down there, we would take that and put it on the road and smash it. You don't want to smash it so it goes in the water. Our native apple snails eat algae, but these, the island apple, the non-native ones, For one thing, they're a lot larger than our native apple snail, and they eat plants, so they can cause a lot of damage. On the flip side, though, the birds that depend on or eat apple snails, for instance, the snail chitin and even the limpkin, these have actually helped them because it's a bigger snail. So when they catch one, they've got a bigger meal. And then this is another reason to wear closed-toed shoes. This is fresh scat. So it might have been a bobcat. It's got hair and everything in it. All right, now everybody, time to get out your notebooks. Hope you printed off the frog, toads, and calls heard in Collier County forms and a pencil. Oh, by the way, I might have forgot to tell you, there's a test at the end of this, so you better take notes. Yep. So what we're going to learn, you're going to learn some of the calls. And you don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert at this. I'm more like a citizen scientist. So, you know, listening to the frogs and that is for anybody, all ages. It's a great family activity. So if you look at your sheet on the left side, it'll say sounds like. So what is written there is what the call sounds like to the majority of people. However, it might not sound like that to you. It might remind you of something else. So you jot your note there. When kids are learning this, it's going to be completely different. They don't have the same life experiences we do. So a lot of the frogs to them sound like animals, or might sound like a baby, a rocking chair, a motorcycle, things that they're hearing at their young age. Then the calling location, this is helpful if you're out there actually listening, because it can help you narrow it down as to what species it might be, if you can tell where that call is coming from. And then over here on the right border, there's a ruler, because as we go over each species, there's going to be a fact sheet that comes up, and it's going to have the size on there. I think a lot of you are going to be surprised at the size of the frogs, especially some of the frogs that we have down here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a sound, and on some of these, a picture will flash for a couple minutes, a hint on some of them on the screen to help you figure out what it is. Then I'll bring it up what it is. On some of them, you're going to hear more than one frog calling, so you're going to listen for the more dominant call that you hear. So is everybody ready? Got your pencils ready? Looking at your sheets? All right, here we go. So that's the oak toad. And they sound, you swear there's baby chicks out there. So if you look at the photo on the left, that oak toad is calling. That's a vocal sac, looks like a big balloon under his chin there. So how do they make that sound? Well, what they do is they bring air into their lungs, and then they close off their nostrils, and then they move that back and forth in that vocal sac, and the vocal sac acts like an amplifier. So this can help you tell the difference between frogs and toads calling, or if it's an insect. Insects aren't using lungs, the air in their lungs to make their sound, so they can do it continuously. The frogs and toads have to stop after maybe calling 3 or 4 times because they got to take another breath of air. So let's do a mini quiz here. Who is doing the calling out there? Is it A, only the males, B, only females, or is the correct answer C, both males and females are doing the calling? Got your answer? Let's see. It's only the males. That's right. The best singer out there gets the girl. So the oak toad, look how little it is, 1 1/4 inches. And they are the smallest toad found in North America. At the bottom of these, there's going to be a so-called fun fact. A lot of them aren't so fun, but a little more information about this, the amphibian we're looking at the time. Okay, here's the next one. Ready? That's our southern toad. If you're from up north, the toads we have up there sound a lot like this. To me, they sound the same. So these are the ones that are going to be on the road after rain, especially June. They're early breeders, and they're not friends with hognose snakes. Well, no toad is actually. You know why, right? Hognose snakes eat toads. That's why they have that turned up nose on the end, so they can dig the toads out. All right, here's the next one. One we don't want to hear. The giant toad, king toad, marine toad, they used to call them bufos. That's because they used to be in the genus Bufo. They've been all moved around. Look at how big they can get. So you got to remember, the size that's shown is the body. It's not with the legs stretched out. And this is pretty much maximum size. They love where areas have been developed. That's where they move in. And the fun fact at the bottom, not so funny. Look at, a female can lay over 30,000 eggs at one time. So a lot of people want to know how to tell the difference between the cane toad and the southern toad, because the cane toad is a problem down here. All toads, they have this parotid gland, which is a poison gland. They produce that milky substance as a defense mechanism. The problem with the cane toad is, look at the size of that gland. It's huge. Plus, it's a big toad. So it produces a big amount of poison. If you look at our local toad, that gland is small. So the problem down here is with the cane toad, is if you have a cat or a small dog that gets a hold of one of these and gets that poison in its mouth, can make your animal very sick and actually can lead to death. So a lot of people want to know how to tell them apart. There's one way. Now, here, the other way is on the head. On the giant or the cane toad, if you look at the top of this head here, see how smooth this is? Now go over and look at our southern toad, our native one. They've got these crests, these big ridges that stick up over there. So if you want to know how to humanely euthanize cane toads, I've put a website up, a Florida Wildlife Commission website. They have excellent, excellent, excellent videos on there that show how to tell them apart, show how to catch them, and how to humanely euthanize them. Highly recommend this website. And they do bring out the point, and everybody should remember this. You should not euthanize a toad that is smaller than 1.5 inches. The reason being, majority of people cannot tell the difference between the native and the cane toad when they're that small. Because remember, cane toads don't start out at 5, 6, 7 inches. When they come out of the tadpole stage, they're little. They also have hints on that website about how to keep these toads, things you can do in your yard to keep the toads out of it. A big thing is, don't put cat and dog food out and leave it out overnight. You're not only bringing the cane toads, which grow very fast when they're eating that type of food, but you're also inviting other wildlife up to your back door. So here again, I highly recommend what I have down at the bottom. It's well worth looking that up. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Are you ready? So that's our narrow-mouthed frog. Sometimes you'll see, they'll say toad. Very unusual looking. It's small, but see this is a fold of skin behind the eyes. Actually, what they believe happens is they put this over their eyes because they eat ants and termites. Yep, frogs and toads eat a lot of things besides mosquitoes. And the sound they say sounds like a sheep, like bah, or kids think it sounds like a baby, you know, wah, wah. So it all depends what your experiences are. All right, next one. Everybody's heard this one. Everybody's heard this one. This is around your house. It's a little greenhouse frog. Look at, they're tiny. So they're from Cuba and farther south. So if you have ever around your house move a pot or the hose or something, you're gonna see, you might think it's a little toad or something, this little brown thing hopping around. That's the greenhouse frog. They're around our houses. They call in the daytime. Sometimes I'm walking with some people near some landscape. Like, oh, wow, did you hear that? Did you hear the greenhouse frogs? And they look at me like I'm nuts. They go, well, we don't hear anything. So I have them stand and listen, and then they hear it. So one thing about doing this, listening for frogs and toads, you're going to find out that we don't use our hearing sense like we could. And you're really going to fine tune your hearing if you start listening for the toads and frogs. This one, the greenhouse frog, does not have a tadpole stage. They do not need water to reproduce. They lay their eggs in like damp leaves or in the mulch that you have around your plants. So that's one reason they like to be around the house. Okay, the next one. That's the floater cricket frog. And that audio, I think they were too close to the frogs. When you're out in the field, it really does sound like somebody taking two glass marbles and clicking them together. And the way they say to ID this frog when you see it is they say, look for they have a dark triangle on their head. Well, I don't know about you, but when I look at it, I see the big Y that's on their back, the letter Y. What about you? Which do you see? So here again, look at the size, 1 1/4 inches or smaller. Temperature does affect what the call sounds like. So on this one, I'm going to play 2 calls. The first one is when it's nice and warm, and the second one is when it's cooler. And this is when it's cooler. So now I suppose you're thinking it's really complicated, huh? Yeah. So frogs seem to like to call. They like it when it's, well, last week it was about 24 degrees Celsius in that range, or that would be like 76, 77 Fahrenheit in that. It gets up to, 26 degrees and higher Celsius, or that'd be about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. They're not calling too much. So this is a southern leopard frog, and the physical difference when you look at them from the northern is on the ear, the tympanum, the eardrum that you see there, the ear, they have a spot, the southern one does. And the fun fact at the bottom, that's from personal experience. I was near a lake and I heard this woman screaming, just screaming. And I knew there were kids down there and I thought, oh my gosh, did one of the kids fall in the lake? So I started heading down there, and there was a little pond in between where I was in the lake, and I got up to it and go, well, wait, that scream's coming from that pond. I looked, there was a banded water snake eating a southern leopard frog, and the frog was screaming. But you know what? I guess I'd be screaming too if I was being eaten by a snake. All right, next one. Yep, the photograph on the right was taken at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and it was taken by Christine Cook. She was nice enough to let me use this photograph, and actually Christine is a volunteer there at this sanctuary. So if they're getting frog legs down here, catching native frogs, this is the frog, because this is our biggest native frog, and they eat mainly crayfish. That's why if you remember, the pig frog was on the road and the crayfish was on the road. Pig frog might have been after the crayfish. All right, next one, here we go. That's the squirrel tree frog, and they say it sounds like an angry squirrel. Well, I personally don't know what an angry squirrel sounds like, but they also make, it sounds like a quack, like a duck. And last week down Sabal Palm, these were chorusing, so it made it a little bit hard to hear any of the other frogs down there. All right, here we go. Next one, we got to move it along. We got a lot, and I'm not doing all of them that are down here. There's about 15 species in Collier County, and between Lee and Charlotte and all down in this area, there might be 17, just depends where you are. Green tree frog. Both of these photos were taken at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. A good place to look for them when you visit is look on the alligator flag. They love to hide on those leaves. And sometimes people confuse them with the squirrel tree frog, but the green tree frog has this big, has this white strip that goes all the way down. And not always green. If you remember that video I showed earlier of the frog on the road there at the junior sheriff's camp, that was a green tree frog, but it was dark in color because of the temperature. Temperature makes a difference. They lay their eggs the way a lot of them do. They like that ephemeral water, you know, water, it's here and then gone. You just have to make sure it's going to be there long enough for the tadpole stage. But here again, no fish, cuts down on the number of predators. Yep, barking tree frog. And they do actually, you will swear there are dogs out there. And we did hear these down Sabal Palm last week. This is our largest native tree frog. We have one bigger here, but it's not native. Cuban tree frog. I'm sure you've seen them. They're on your windows at night if you live down here. Not native. And all these photos, believe it or not, these are Cuban tree frogs. They can be a variety of colors. It depends upon the temperature, what's going on. The way to tell them is if you look at this photo, look at the size of these toe pads. They have very, very large toe pads. They're going to be around where houses, they love to be around houses. Now the photo at the bottom, this one, that was taken at Freedom Park. They called me one day, it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. There had just been a big rainstorm and they had all these frogs and toads calling over there. And they said, hey, Becky, can you come over? We don't know what these are. So I looked at them and, you know, looking at them, you might not know that they were Cubans, but here again, this is where the calls are important. The call will tell you who it is. As a matter of fact, that's how a lot of new species are discovered. Often biologists will hear the call first, and then they have to try to find what's making the call. So that's the largest tree frog we have here, but remember it's not native. And I have these, they will lay eggs in my little lily pond I have in my backyard. So what I do for a control is, because I know it's the Cubans, tree frogs laying the eggs, I go out every morning with my net And if there are Cuban tree frog eggs in my pond, I dip them out and I throw them into the grass. I just think it's more humane to just not let the eggs hatch at all. Because these will eat, you know, they can eat some of our other frogs in that. All right, time for a test. Are you ready? Let's see if you learn these. Remember, I learned the calls in one night when I was out there, so I had a little more time than you've had. We've had to go through these pretty quickly. So here we go. So there are going to be 4 of them. What I'm going to do is I will play the call. You can write down what it is. And then after we've gone through all 4 of these, I will come back and we will give the answers to see how you did. So we're going to start with number 1. Is everybody ready? Here we go. Okay. Write down your answer. All right, we're going to move to number 2. Moving on to number 3. Now, with number 4, I'm putting a real challenge here for you. If you remember some of the audio I played down when we were on Sabal Palm, we didn't have just one frog calling. There were multiple ones. Sometimes actually last week, this was great. It set a record for us. At the junior sheriff's camp, we heard 9 different species there. 9. The most we'd ever had before was 8, and it happened to be at that same spot, but it was in 2013. It was in June, but 2013. So that just really made us happy. So you have to be able to kind of listen to everything that's going on and concentrate on each one. So in this one, there are going to be 3 sounds made by a living thing. And the one's this will see how good you are. The one you're really gonna have to listen. So get your ears open here. Here we go. See if you can catch 3 living sounds in here made by living things. All right, so, you know, you're probably saying, why in the world, giving us a test, what is this? Well, you know what, we wanted you to experience what the students have been experiencing here this year, that they've had to have their classes online. So here, we're just sharing is what we're doing. So I hope you're not cheating there if you're sitting with somebody else. So, all right, number 1, let's see if you got this one right. Are you ready to check your papers? If you're with somebody else, exchange your paper. Grade each other's paper. Here we go, number 1. All right. Number 2, the answer. How you doing? Has everybody got 100% so far? All right, let's move on to number 3. barrel-mouthed frog. All right, now for the big one. Number 4. Did you get all 3? Here we go. Did you get the 3rd one? There you go. If you got that one, you get extra credit and a big star. So I hope this has piqued your interest. This is a great family activity, especially with everything that's going on now. You're looking for things to do as a family. You just want to make sure you're in a safe place. So I hope it's everybody going to have their ears open and listen. If you want to get the sound, the audio, the calls, there are websites you can go to. University of Florida has a really good one. So you will need your list, which if you printed off the frog call list that I had, because they'll have other frogs calling that we don't hear down here because they cover the state. So it's just a great free thing you can do, something to do at night instead of sitting and watching the TV. So that's all I got. Sally, were there any questions that maybe I can try to answer? I'm not an expert, but I'll try.
Okay, sure, Becky. Most of them had to do with frog calls. Basically, they wonder if there's a resource that they can learn. And you just mentioned the University of Florida website.
Yes.
But what resources do you recommend for learning frog calls? Like, does the Frogwatch site have any audio recordings of frogs? Is there an app for frog calls or anything?
They don't have that. If you Google it, you can get it. And see, normally when I give this in person, so this is a disadvantage to doing it this way, we actually have a CD that we made here that we give out for that. So we have a few on hand, but the building's not open as of yet. So, but a lot of it's online. Matter of fact, that's where we got a lot of those recordings, was from online. So if you Google frog calls, Florida frog calls, University of Florida, they seem to have a really good website there.
Okay, cool. And then the only other kind of question we got was about how to tell the difference between the native and non-native apple snails, which I can kind of answer.
You can answer that better than I can.
Okay. Well, there are 4 non-native apple snails in Florida. The one that we see the most in our area is called the island apple snail. And it's really hard to tell, unless you're really experienced at it, to tell an adult snail from the Florida apple snail. But generally, they're bigger and a little more yellow. There's some differences in the shell structure too. But it's very easy to tell the difference between the non-native island apple snail eggs and the native apple snail eggs. And that's the easiest way to try to control them, just like Becky said with the Cuban tree frog eggs, is to try and remove and crush any of the non-native apple snail eggs that you find. And the basic differences between the native and the island apple snail, the egg clusters are bright pink in the island apple snail, and they have tiny eggs, but hundreds of them in each of the egg clusters. The native Florida apple snail has maybe only 20 to 40 bigger white eggs in their clusters. So bigger eggs and whiter and fewer of them in the native apple snail.
Yeah, I should have put it on there. Lots of times I have a photo of the native. They look like pearls, is what they remind me of, pearls, and they'll lay them on.
That's true. That's a cool thing. That's a cool thing to remember it by. So, and another person had a question of what the answer to the first test question was. It was a southern toad, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, and I think that was all. Let me just double check and see if there were any other questions. No, I think that was it for now. But if anybody has additional questions, you can email me at Sally, beckystein@audubon.org. You can find my email address on the bottom of my name screen here. It's also on the Corkscrew website. And we'll pass the questions on to Becky. And thank you, Becky, very much. It was very interesting, and hopefully it inspires people to get out and hear what frogs are calling in their area this summer.
Yeah, and Sally, I hope you got 100% because you are on a Frogwatch crew up there.
Yeah, I help with the Frogwatch crew for the Corkscrew neighborhood area. So it's a lot of fun.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.